I still remember the sound of my own heartbeat that day. Loud, heavy, almost drowning out the music playing in the background as I stood in my wedding tuxedo, waiting for my parents to arrive. Everyone else was there, friends, colleagues, distant relatives. But the two people I wanted to see most never showed up. My mother and father didn't come to my wedding. They ignored every call, every text, every message I sent them. And when I saw the photos later, my mom out shopping, my dad golfing that same afternoon, I realized exactly what I meant to them. Nothing. But you know what's crazy? A few months later, when they saw me pull up in a brand new 135,000 Porsche, suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. So now I need to ask, was I wrong for what I did next? Because let's just say, I didn't exactly forgive them. It all started years before the wedding, way before I could even afford a decent car, let alone a Porsche. I grew up in a family that looked perfect from the outside. Big house, nice neighborhood. Two professional parents who were always dressed perfectly and spoke politely to everyone. But inside that house, I was never really a part of the picture. I was the quiet kid, the one who didn't quite fit their mold. My father, a corporate lawyer, always said I'd never make it unless I became someone respectable. My mom was the social butterfly, always attending charity dinners and luncheons, always obsessed with appearances. They loved showing me off when it made them look good, like at my high school graduation. But when I chose a different path, their smiles faded fast. I didn't go to law school. I didn't even finish college. Instead, I dropped out to start my own digital marketing agency. Back then, it sounded insane even to me. I had no degree, no experience, and barely any savings. My parents called it a phase. My father actually laughed in my face and said, "Distance. You're wasting your life chasing internet money." My mom just sighed, said I was embarrassing them, and asked me not to tell anyone what I was doing. That hurt more than I'll ever admit. But I stayed silent. I worked from a tiny apartment, eating instant noodles and surviving on coffee. I barely slept. But something inside me refused to give up. Every time I remembered their words, "You'll never make it without us," I pushed harder. Years went by. My business started small, just me and a laptop. But then clients started rolling in. I learned everything: SEO, branding, paid ads. I didn't just work hard, I obsessed. While my friends partied, I built campaigns, studied analytics, and chased every potential lead. By the time I was 25, I had 3 employees. At 27, we were working with national brands. And by 30, I had a 7-figure business with over 40 staff members. My life completely flipped, but one thing never changed: my parents' silence. They never asked how I was doing, never visited, never congratulated me on anything. The few times I called, they'd sound cold and distant, like they were talking to a stranger. My mom once told me, "We just don't understand your lifestyle. You're always so busy, always working. It's not normal." My father added, "You should have stayed in school. Maybe then we'd have something to be proud of." That line cut deep. Proud. They were never proud, not once. Then came the wedding. I met Emily 3 years ago. Smart, independent, everything I wanted in a partner. She didn't care about my money or what I drove. She was with me back when I was still struggling, sleeping 3 hours a night, trying to keep my company alive. When I proposed, she cried and said yes without hesitation. I told my parents a month later, hoping, stupidly, that this might finally bring them around. Maybe seeing me happy, stable, successful, would melt their icy hearts. I invited them personally, sent the invitations myself, even called my mom the week before to make sure they'd received it. Distance. She sounded hesitant but said, "We'll see what we can do." My dad didn't say a word. On the wedding day, as the music started and guests filled the hall, I kept glancing at the door. I told myself maybe they were running late, maybe traffic, maybe they'd surprise me. But they never came. They didn't even text. I tried to hide it, smiling through the ceremony, pretending everything was perfect. But when I danced with my wife, I couldn't stop the tears. Not because I was sad, I was angry at myself for expecting anything from them. Angry that after all the success, all the sacrifices, I was still that invisible kid they never wanted, A week later, I decided to call them one last time. My mom picked up. She sounded casual, almost bored. "Oh, hey, sweetie," she said. "How was the wedding?" I froze. She didn't even apologize. Didn't even pretend to care. I asked her why they didn't come, and she said, "Distance." "Well, your father had golf that afternoon, and honestly, we didn't think it would be that big of a deal. We'll see the photos later." I hung up without saying another word. That was the moment I decided, if they didn't want to be a part of my life, they never would be again. For the next 2 years, I cut all contact. I built my business even bigger, bought my dream house, and yes, finally bought my dream car, a 2023 Porsche 911 Turbo S. It cost me $135,000 even after negotiating hard. The day I picked it up, I remember sitting behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought I might break it. It wasn't just a car, it was proof. Proof that I made it without them. Proof that every time they doubted me, I was silently building an empire. Then came the twist. My cousin was getting married, and my parents were going to be there. I wasn't planning on attending, but Emily convinced me. "Closure," she said, "distance. You don't have to talk to them. Just show up, enjoy yourself, and leave." So I did. But when I arrived, something unexpected happened. The moment I pulled up in that Porsche, the entire tone changed. My dad, who hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, suddenly appeared out of nowhere, grinning ear to ear. "Whoa, son," he said, circling the car. "Is this yours?" My mom walked up next, touching the door handle like it was sacred. "This is beautiful. You must be doing really well for yourself." I didn't even know how to respond. I just stood there, watching the people who'd ignored my wedding suddenly act like proud parents. They kept asking about my business, my house, my travels. My dad even said, "Distance. We always knew you'd figure it out. You just needed time to grow." I almost laughed. It was like they'd rewritten history in their heads. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second and tell me what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have forgiven them and moved on? Or would you have shown them exactly what being ignored feels like? Think about it. All right, here's what I did. I smiled politely and kept my distance throughout the event. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reunion scene, but when they asked if they could come by my house to catch up, I agreed. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I wanted them to see what they had thrown away. A week later, they showed up at my home. My dad looked around, clearly impressed. "You've done well for yourself?" he said, his voice tight. My mom touched everything like she was touring a museum. "We're just so proud of you," she kept saying. But it was all fake. I could see it in their eyes. They didn't miss me, they missed what I represented. Status, success, bragging rights, so I decided to play their games. I told them about my business growth, the brands I'd partnered with, the awards I'd won. I casually mentioned the Porsche again, how it was fully paid off. Their smiles got wider and wider. Then my dad said the line that changed everything. "You know, it would be nice to have family dinners again. Maybe you could help us with a few expenses. We're thinking about renovating the house." That's when I realized exactly why they were back. It wasn't love, it was greed. I smiled and said, "Sure, Dad. But let's start with something small. Why don't you both come to my office tomorrow? I'll show you around." They agreed immediately. The next day they walked into my office. Modern glass walls, busy employees, the kind of place that screamed success. I led them into the boardroom and said, "I just need you to sign something first." My dad frowned. "Sign what?" I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of the last text I'd sent them before my wedding, with one line at the bottom, "Be signing. You acknowledge you chose not to be part of my life when it mattered." They stared at it. My mom looked uncomfortable. My dad's jaw tightened. "What is this?" "Some kind of joke," he said. I shrugged. "Not a joke, just closure." He refused to sign, but my mom actually did. Her hands were shaking. Then I said, "Good. Now that that's settled, you can leave." My dad looked furious. "You're being disrespectful. he said. We're your parents. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, no, you're strangers who share my DNA. Parents show up. You didn't. And I walked out. They called after me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't have to after that day. I blocked their numbers, their emails, everything. It was painful but freeing. For the first time in my life, I didn't crave their approval. I realized their love was conditional, based on status, success, image. And that's not love. That's ownership. Months passed. Word spread through the family. Some relatives said I was cruel. Others said I did the right thing. My cousin called me one night and said, distance. They've been telling everyone you turned arrogant. That money changed you. I just laughed. Money didn't change me. It exposed them. A few months later, I drove past my parents' old neighborhood and saw a for sale sign in front of their house. Turns out they did need the money after all. For a second I felt bad. But then I remembered standing alone at the altar, waiting for parents who never cared enough to show up. And that guilt disappeared. Emily asked me once if I'd ever forgive them. I told her, I already did. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means letting go of their power over me. And that's the truth. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't care. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about me. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I know one thing. They'll never forget the look on my face that day in the boardroom. The look of a man who finally stopped begging for love and started demanding respect. So, was I wrong for what I did? Maybe. Maybe I could have handled it softer. But tell me, how do you forgive people who only show up when you shine? Who only remember your name when there's something to gain? I learned the hard way that sometimes blood isn't family. Loyalty is. If you've ever been in a situation like this, where success suddenly makes people remember you exist, you'll understand exactly why I did what I did. It wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. I stopped chasing ghosts and started living my own life. So yeah, my parents ignored my wedding, but when they saw my 135,000 Porsche, they remembered I existed. And when they tried to walk back into my life, distance, I made sure they understood one thing. You don't get to skip the struggle and join the celebrations. You either believe in me when I'm nothing, or you don't get me when I'm everything. Like this video if you were on my side, and subscribe for more stories like this. And seriously, drop a comment and tell me what you would have done if your parents ignored your wedding, but came crawling back once you made it big. I'll see you all in the next story.